you've mentioned shadow work quite a bit. For those listening now live and on the replay, can you kind of talk about what shadow work is and then also how it helps?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was introduced into shadow work when I was in Hawaii and studying with the Barbara Brennan healer. Her name's Rui Ryborn. She's awesome. And we read some of the books from like Ava Pericos and essentially what shadow work is taking these parts of ourselves that we would rather not have, whether that's the jealousy or the anger or the pain or the grief, and getting to almost like you're separating it from yourself to look at it and to understand it and to hold it and honor it as a part of you and your experience and your being.
Okay.
So rather than trying to numb out or repress or push away or avoid or disassociate or say, I'm not that way or I hate that part of myself, you're actually taking it and looking at it, and you're like shining the light on the shadow kind of a thing, and reintegrating this piece of yourself. So it's really getting into the depths of the dark side of ourselves that is just the reality of being human. We have a duality in our experience with, and so, you know, and to add to this, I think there's a piece where I know when I first started going into healing work, I was like, I'm going to do this thing and then I'm going to be healed and I'm never going to have
Yep.
the inner critic anymore and I'm never going to feel pain again. Like I really, like I went into it like, I'm like A+ student. When I put my mind to something, I'm like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm never going to feel like shit again. And it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to be healed and like all the things.
Yep.
And it was almost like a devastating piece for me when I found out that that's like not how it works. Because I was like, I had experienced so much grief and so much heartbreak
Yeah.
that I didn't. And with like my best friend passing away when I was 21, I was like, I don't want to feel that. But it was not wanting to feel a part of me and my own human experience.
Oh, I love that.
And so
Yeah.
that's where the shadow work is like, how can I hold this piece of me, even if it's like the most outrageous, painful thing, and not relive it, but accept that it is an experience. And there's just, I know how complex this is, especially when there's been really traumatic things and painful things that have happened to people. And it's not to say that you need to forgive. I'm not a big believer that you have to forgive in order to heal. Sometimes not forgiving, is like a path of like healing for people. And so it's more of like letting go of like having to forgive or having to be at peace with what happened. It's letting that be in the past, but like loving on and healing and accepting where you are in those pieces of yourself now, and not trying to change them, not trying to forgive them, not trying to judge it, but just being like, yeah, this part of myself experienced pain and it is now trying to protect me from something. It's now the piece of me that tries to keep me safe. It's now the piece of me that gives me more discernment. So I don't
Yeah.
just keep chasing guys or recreating these things. So the more that you can really look at those shadow pieces of yourself, it dismantles and starts to unpack the unconscious parts that are operating our system. Because when you're not aware that it's running the show,
Yeah.
so this is like a lot of the unconscious, pieces of ourselves, we'll keep recreating the same patterns because we don't know that piece that's like, oh, I'm doing this because I'm actually really terrified. I'm doing this because I'm actually in pain. And coming back to that piece, when I understood that my jealousy stemmed from the abandonment, the fear of being left and not loved, and then it's like I can have compassion for that part of myself versus being like, fuck, I hate myself for this. I hate that
Yeah.
I do this. And so it changes the way we are in relationship with ourselves. And when we can have more connection, compassion, and intimacy with ourselves, it absolutely changes how we show up and relate to the world.
Absolutely. That's awesome. As far as emotional healing, we hear about that a lot. What does that look like to you? And have you been able to heal? Well, we already kind of answered that, but have you been able to heal over the years?
Oh my gosh, this is really the core of my work is emotional healing. Um, I'm a Pisces. I have a stellium and Scorpio in my sign. Like I have very deep waters and emotions, and for the longest time, it felt like my Achilles heel. I hated how emotional I was. And I also was brought up in a family where I was too sensitive. I was too emotional. And that was always the feedback that I got. So I internalized a lot of that. And so, what emotional healing is to me is um, allowing your emotions to be feelings that are feedback. So, just as we can observe our thoughts and our thoughts are not us,
Yeah.
our emotions are also not us in the sense of like our soul and our like true self, but our emotions are feedback, and they are sensory tool that our body uses to let us know if something is safe, not safe, good, bad, all the ways our brain categorizes things. And so when we can learn how to be like, oh, this feeling doesn't feel good to me, it is feedback for you to make a decision or to make a choice or to change something. And you get to I don't like to say like control your feelings, because they're moving, they're fluid, they are emotion, they are in motion.
Hmm.
So when we try to control feelings or emotions is when they get stuck or repressed, like right when we're trying to compartmentalize or not feel or push this thing down, or I'll come back to that when I can deal with it kind of thing. It causes dis-ease in the body, it causes constriction, it causes tightness, numbing, you know, stiffening, different things like that. And the emotional healing aspect is so much of the shadow work of like, can I, at the bottom of the barrel, sit with this pain, this anger, this uncomfortable feeling
Hmm.
without judging it, without trying to like become it and be in the abyss and not have control over it and think I have no control and like getting swept away. Can I be with it and look at and feel into what it is communicating to me so that I can like learn to move with it? And that's a
Uh,
lot of the
okay.
work that I do is teaching people how to actually experience, a, to actually be in their body, because most of us live in our heads in Western
Yes.
society, and
Yes.
then learning how to move with this emotion. So it's not you, but it is being expressed and it's giving you feedback. So what is it telling you? How does it want to move through your body? How can you let it move instead of trying to hold it? And then there's all this like, oh, like I just got to keep the lid on or else like shit's going to hit the fan kind of a
Hmm.
thing. Um, and and I do want to say to this too, like so many people are so afraid of their own emotions, the negative emotions, that they avoid therapy. They avoid feeling anything because it's too much or all of these things. And it's something that's been taught to us is to
Yep.
not feel, to not talk about your feelings. Like, girls or guys don't cry, like all these things. It's like you're a human being and
Hmm.
your feelings are sensations. They are no different than taste and touch and smell and sight. They are sensations. Your body is giving you feedback
Yep.
around a situation. And so the more that we can normalize that, there's so much healing that comes with that, where the intimacy that gets created between humans around sitting with each other in the good and the bad, in the pain, and not trying to like fix it or tell someone that they shouldn't feel this way or they shouldn't cry or things are going to get better or like all those things. It's like, can you witness someone, your own emotions and someone else's, and hold that space for you to just unpack those things. And it's not to wallow in it, it's not to like be complaining or gossiping or any of those things. It's more of like, can we acknowledge it for the raw truth of what it is, without a story, without a judgment, all these things, and then from there how to move with it as a piece of who you are. And through that process, it dissolves it and dismantles it. It takes the charge out of it. So
Got
when
it.
you're not afraid of something, there's not as like, if you're not afraid to feel angry, if you're not afraid to feel grief, it it moves differently through your body because you're not resisting it. You're not trying to push it away. You're not trying to hold it somewhere. It's like you understand that, like, oh, I'm feeling this thing and I'm going to love on it and hold it and like let it be here. And how differently it just in how we relate to other humans of like, you can then see like, oh, this person's dealing with this thing. So when you see a child act out, or even a lot of the stuff we see in news when people are doing this crazy shit and you're like, I can't, these people are crazy. And it's like, no, they're fucking traumatized and they are in pain. And it's not to excuse bad behavior, but it also is like when we can have those kinds of conversations around, can we get this person the help that they actually need to unpack the pain versus vilifying people? It's a game changer as far as a
100%.
human experience and how we relate to each other.
I would like to touch a little bit more on what you're saying. I 100% agree with everything you're saying. I myself am a very emotional person and grew up in a home where it wasn't appreciated. And thus, the relationships I had after that treated me the same exact way, as far as
Mm-hmm.
being emotional means you're weak, being emotional is annoying, it's a waste of time, it's dramatic. Here she goes again.
Yeah.
So I totally 100% get that. And I am now in a space where I am 90% more comfortable with the fact that at any given moment, anything can trigger me to get emotional, to cry. Whether I'm talking about my own story or listening to somebody else's story. It used to be that I'd be ashamed, I'd apologize. And the fact that you're talking about anger, I am now comfortable with the fact that sometimes I am angry and sometimes I am a little more dramatic when I am angry than other times.
Yeah.
But with that, I would like to get your opinion, because this platform was predominantly based on narcissism. So when I first started this platform, it was filled with narcissistic stories. And it has thus, since then expanded into a lot more. In your opinion, how does one know when anger is being used abusively versus we are allowed to be angry and have anger?
That's a great question.
Because that can be confusing for an empath hearing that, because it's like, okay, well, then I need to be respectful of the fact that he or she flies off the handle. So I need to be respectful of that. But where's the line in that?
So
This is your
yeah,
opinion.
this is
Your
such a great
opinion.
question. It's such a good question. So this has been a big one for me because anger wasn't safe. And when I was younger, whether that's with my first stepdad, when he got angry, he would lock us out of the house. Like we get locked out of the house, or he would spank us, and like it was terrifying. And later with my brother and his chaotic like outbursts of like you just never knew when it was gonna happen. And the thing about anger, whether it is ourselves or someone else, is you can experience anger in healthy ways. And expressing anger in a healthy way does not attack other people. So for the empaths that are like, oh, this person flies off the handle and I just need to be loving, and because it's like, I feel like a lot of empaths justify bad behavior because they can relate or have compassion to the trauma or the hurts that the narcissist or like that person has. And but the problem with that, it's not necessarily a problem, it's just kind of like the muddy waters that can happen with that, is they are then justifying being abused, whether it's verbally or emotionally, and again internalizing and recreating the same cycle that they probably grew up with. So healthy anger looks like the person who's getting triggered and angry being like, I need a pause, I'm getting upset and I don't want to take it out on you, so I need to step away. I will come back, I'm not leaving you, I'm not abandoning you, whatever that verbiage is for their partner, around like, I need to go process this, and in a way that they're not going to say things that they don't mean and attack their partner, because that happens when people are angry. They usually say things they don't mean and or justify like really harsh things, being like, well, that's how I feel and I'm right because I'm righteous in my rage, kind of a thing. So for that person, whether it's yourself or the partner, to step away and go punch some pillows, go chop some wood, go for a run, and then knowing that like, I get to be angry, like I'm upset about this thing, and the core of anger is fire and change. So when people are angry, it gives you the fuel for change. So when someone is angry, it's because a boundary has been crossed, because they feel violated, or something has happened that their body is lighting up to defend itself. Right. So like anytime somebody's angry, it's because there's an injustice, there's a boundary, there's something that's happened. So again, knowing your triggers of like this thing, I know this thing can piss me off, or my partner does this thing and it fucking pisses me off, right? It's a human experience. And normalizing and being okay with like, do I feel like anger is safe for me, or to when I'm in the room with someone else that's angry, and looking at your own reactions to anger and what feels safe, what doesn't, having communication around the anger of like, I'm feeling angry right now. I don't want to say something that is going to hurt you or our relationship or us. So I need to step away and take a beat, take a breath, process. And the biggest thing with anger is words and physical. So anger can cause, physical when somebody doesn't know how to process their own anger and they punch a wall or a person or something, and or verbal attacking, right? There's also stonewalling, where someone just won't talk to you to teach you a lesson, and they won't talk to you for 3 days at a time. So you know that they're pissed. I've experienced that in a relationship, and it was the most like traumatic thing for me, of being like, why can't we just talk about it? Like, so for people, especially empaths, to not internalize someone else's behavior or to justify it, is how can we learn how, for both of us, to express anger in a healthy way? And it's a building process, and it's a learning experience, and people aren't going to get it right away. I think anytime there's a rupture in a relationship, when there's a discommunication or something happens where there's a breakdown, it's an opportunity to build up stronger, because it breaks down this thing that wasn't working and allows you to come back and communicate in a way where it can come back stronger. I know anytime I've had a rupture with best friends or family or different things, and we can actually talk about and talk through what happened, I feel closer to them. Like, oh, we both brought our truth to the table, and we can actually build from that, versus staying in this like reactive ping pongy state. So yeah, with anger, I would say like really understanding how you yourself feel with anger. Like, is it safe? Is it not? Do I feel comfortable being angry without retaliating on someone else or internalizing it? Because when we internalize grief, it can shut us down, or anger, it can turn into grief and like internalize it. So, and then learning how to also, on the other side, if someone is like angry and starts attacking you, because some people, that's just their pattern, because that's what they learn, to also be like, I want to have this conversation with you, but right now I'm feeling triggered and I want to take time away. So it's also giving yourself the space if someone is like really charged and they want to have that conversation and they're lit up, and you are wanting to stay neutral and be in more of like a I want to talk through this with you, versus like coming at each other, is to give yourself the space to like honor and validate your own needs of like, I want to talk about this with you, but I want us both to be in a space where we can hear each other, or whatever that conversation looks like. But anger is really powerful when used correctly. It creates movements. It creates human rights in ways of like standing in that truth of like, this isn't okay, and I'm not okay with this happening. So again, just like learning the pieces of anger around it is an activator. It is wanting to create change. It is wanting to justify or stand for what's right, or if a boundary's been crossed, and then getting to bring awareness around, am I just being triggered and this anger is a release or a way that I just pop off? Is this anger because I need to speak up for myself and set a boundary that's been crossed? Or have I been violated and I want justice or like something to change? You know, it's really getting into this play of like, what is it for me? And if someone else is angry, not just justifying, oh, it's just
Mm.
because they're angry or those kinds of things, and saying like, hey, I don't accept this kind of behavior or to be talked to this way. So I want us both to take a minute and come back and talk about this when we both can hear each other and actually like talk about the problem versus like attack the other person or blame the person for something.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.